Hello everyone. Tonight we drift into the eye again, into a place where the stars themselves whisper, and your name means nothing unless a god speaks it. You stand before a choice that no mortal mind can truly make. To give up death in exchange for eternity. Sounds tempting, doesn't it? Eternal power, endless life, the respect of the damned. The only problem, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And if you're listening somewhere out in the dark, tell me your location and your local time in the comments. And so the wheel of fate turns again. Sacrifice has been made. The first key has turned, and mankind takes one step closer to the light of the throne. This is not the end. This is only the beginning. The bargain for eternity always starts the same way. With fear of weakness, of insignificance, of dying and being forgotten. You stand at the edge of mortality and whisper the words you swore you'd never speak. The warp listens. It always does, and from that moment, your name begins to dissolve, syllable by syllable, replaced by something older, heavier, and hungry. Lore masters still debate whether any mortal can ever truly choose damnation. They argue that chaos doesn't tempt, it reveals. Maybe you are always going to kneel. Maybe the moment you doubted the Emperor, the outcome was written in the language of the warp itself. Your first lesson comes quickly. Power has a smell. Ozone and something sweet. Like rotting fruit under starlight. It coils round you as you draw the sigils in blood that isn't yours. You think you're in control because your hand moves. But that's the joke. It's not your hand anymore. The ritual circle flickers. The 8 spires rise. Every scream is part of the music. You think of those stories where heroes gain strength through pain. But this pain doesn't build. It empties. You trade self for significance, identity for influence. The gods don't bargain. They consume. Historians still argue whether any demon prince actually remembers being human. Some claim that memory burns away in the ascension flame. Others say it remains, trapped inside the new form, whispering reminders of what was lost. Either way, you feel it slipping, the warmth of flesh, the quiet logic of mortality. You start seeing too much. The universe opens like a wound. Every star screams. Every shadow has purpose. You can smell thoughts. That's when you realize it's already too late. The bargain isn't something you sign. It's something you become. There's an old word-bearer saying, faith is proof of weakness. You never believed it when you served the Emperor. Now you repeat it as scripture. Because faith brought you here. Faith that something greater was listening. And it was. When the first voice speaks, it doesn't sound divine. It sounds familiar. Like your own thoughts answering from a distance. It tells you that the end of flesh is the beginning of meaning. That your death will be the first step toward perfection. You want to believe it. You need to believe it. You kill for days, maybe weeks. Time loses structure. The ritual continues, a pattern written across the corpses of the faithful. Blood pools in rooms that shimmer when viewed. From orbit, it's all geometry, all purpose. You're just one moving part in a cosmic equation designed by something that doesn't do mercy. Then, it happens. The sky splits and something steps through. Not a god. Not yet. A herald. The greater demon's voice hits your skull like an earthquake made of whispers. It calls you mortal with the same tone you'd use for an insect. It offers eternity. Not peace, not freedom. Eternity. And you say yes. You always say yes. The pain that follows is beyond screaming. You feel your body twist into new logic. Limbs grow, dissolve, reform. You see your own bones turn into light, then into thought. You lose track of where pain ends and meaning begins. Every moment stretches across 1,000 realities. You are told the gods. Reward devotion, the truth. They rewrite it. When it's done, you stand taller, brighter, warmer. The air bends round you, the followers kneel. You open your mouth to praise your god, and realize your words aren't yours anymore. Trivia time. Some Lex mechanics once calculated that a Daemon Prince's immortality lasts, on average, about 7,000 years before dissolution or banishment. Meaning, even eternity has an expiration date. But for now, you are the power incarnate. You command storms. You tear through fleets. You hear the warp applauding every atrocity you commit, you think. This is freedom. And then, between the pulses of victory, you catch the first whisper of laughter. Not around you, but inside you, it sounds like triumph, but it's not yours. You'll remember this sound long after your name is forgotten. It's the sound of your new master smelling. You were once proud to call yourself Astartes, a son of the Emperor, carved from his vision, built to spread light. Into the dark, you marched across stars wearing the word-bearer's crimson, and you believed every sermon you spoke. The Emperor was perfection. Humanity would rise with him. Your bolter was him. Your faith was your armor. Lore masters still debate whether the word-bearers ever truly betrayed the Emperor, or if the betrayal began with him, when he demanded silence in place of worship. When he tore down their temples, he planted the seed of rebellion. That's the irony. The first heretics were made by divine censorship. You were there when Lorgar knelt. You saw your primarchs. Devotion crushed under imperial logic. Worship nothing, said the Emperor, and so Lorgar went searching for something worthy to worship. You followed, not because of fear, but conviction. If divinity exists, it deserves reverence. If not the Emperor, then who? Historians still argue whether the word-bearer's descent into chaos was intentional. Some say Lorgar knew what he was doing. Others claim the gods found him. It doesn't matter. The result was the same. Scripture became weapon. Prayer became war. You remember the early campaigns after the fall. The long war hadn't yet stretched into madness. You and your brothers were zealots with purpose. You burned cathedrals not out of hatred, but to replace false gods with real ones. You told yourself you were freeing people from lies, never realizing you were replacing one lie with another. There's a phrase whispered among the veterans of the Great Crusade. Belief is the slowest poison. You understand it now. When Lorgar raised the first temple to chaos, you were there. When Erebus offered the first human sacrifice to the Pantheon, you didn't flinch. It felt right, righteous, even. You thought you were standing at the dawn of a new truth. But truth doesn't dawn in the warp. It devours. You remember your first vision of the gods, shapes beyond comprehension, promises whispered through bleeding. Stars, each one offered meaning. Each one asked only for devotion. It didn't feel like corruption. It felt like revelation the Emperor had give. And you purpose without soul. Chaos offered soul without limit. You prayed, and the warp answered, not with comfort, but with attention. You felt its gaze, curious, amused, analytical, like a PR editor studying new prey. The first miracles came small. A weapon glowing with unnatural fire. A wound closing before blood could fall. You told your brothers it was the will of the true gods. They believe. Because belief is what word-bearers do best. Trivia for you, the word-bearers were the first legion to write a codex of faith. Not tactics, not formations, literal prayers turned into battle doctrine. Every bullet they fired had a verse carved into the casing. Imagine dying from a scripture as centuries passed. Your faith deepened into something sharper. You learned the rituals, the symbols, the prices the Emperor had asked for. Discipline. Chaos asked for creativity. You painted meaning in blood. You measured victory in screams. Still, you believed you were choosing. That's the tragedy. No demon prince is ever forced. You walk into the pit willingly, thinking it's a throne room. You served under commanders who called themselves prophets. Some went mad within months. Others ascended. You envied them. You prayed harder, killed more, burned entire hives just to draw a glance from the gods. And when the whispers finally came to you, it felt like vindication. They said you had potential. They said your conviction amused the architect of fate, the god of change, the trickster who never lies but never tells the truth the same way twice. You didn't understand what kind of attention that was. Lore masters still debate what Tzeentch truly values: intellect, ambition, or chaos itself. Maybe it's none of those. Maybe it's the moment someone believes they can understand him. That's when he wins, when you were chosen. It wasn't a celebration, it was an invitation. You were told to lead a ritual that would echo through the warp. The words were ancient, the math was wrong. Intentionally, that's how warp logic works. To reach the divine, you break reason until it bleeds meaning. You didn't hesitate. Word-bearers never hesitate. You gathered your brothers, raised the spires, aligned them to the constellations no human could see. You were making history. You told yourself. You are also making your grave. The people of that world, nameless, insignificant, became your offering. They screamed hymns you didn't bother to understand. Their deaths were notes in a song the gods had written long before you were born. You remember the sky, turning inside out. You remember the taste of ozone and copper. You remember the voice, not loud, not kind, but curious. It said your name like a question. Then it asked the only question that mattered. Will you serve? And you, loyal word-bearer that you are, didn't think twice. Service was all you'd ever known. You said yes. You would have laughed if you'd understood the joke. The ritual begins the way all bad ideas do, with confidence. You stand beneath a sky bleeding violet, surrounded by towers of flayed corpses. Each spire hums with impossible geometry, aligned to constellations that don't exist in real space. The ground beneath your boots pulses, veins of molten crimson forming rooms that stretch for kilometers. You can feel it breathing. Lore masters still debate whether chaos rituals truly work, or if the results happen simply because the warp enjoys a good performance. Maybe it's not the blood that matters, but the intention. Maybe the gods just like theater for 7 days. You and your brothers conduct the rite. The population is gone. Not dead. Gone. Their essence shredded into the equation you're writing across the planet's crust. You tell yourself this is art, is symphony for gods who appreciate madness as composition. You raise your head to the heavens and call. The air fractures, the veil between realities thins to the texture of skin. Lightning hits the spires in sequence. 1, 2, 4, 8. Because Tzeentch counts differently. And then the storm pot started doesn't appear like you expect. There's no choir of angels screaming backward Latin, no explosion of holy light. What comes through is color, all of them at once, impossible to process. Feathers, scales, glass, flame, laughter. A greater demon of Tzeentch, a lord of change, manifests with the calm of inevitability. Historians still argue if lords of change are individuals or fragments of the same mind. They all speak with voices that contradict themselves and are right both times. This one looks at you, and in 1,000 voices says, "You amuse him." That's the first warning. If a god says you amuse them, start digging your grave now. It calls you mortal, which stings more than it should. You stand there in armor scorched from holy fire, drenched in blood older than your species, surrounded by the corpses of billions, and it still calls you mortal. You realize then that all you've done amounts to a knock on a door. The demon tilts its head, a gesture that looks like thought, but might be mockery. Are you willing to shed the last of your humanity? It asks, not for power, not for wisdom, to serve. You nod. You always nod. And that's when your story burns. The talons pierce your chest. Not to kill, but to rewrite. Fire explodes outward. Not red or orange, but every color that language doesn't have words for. Your armor melts into your skin. Your bones liquefy. You fall apart. Piece by piece, thought by thought. You scream, but your mouth is gone. You try to pray, but the words are devoured before they reach your mind. Pain becomes a medium, like music or paint. Something the gods use to sculpt. You feel your spine stretch, multiply, curl back into itself. Your eyes melt, then reform in new places. A second heart starts beating somewhere in your abdomen. You taste sound. You hear color. The air sings equations. Your body becomes a canvas for a god who doesn't care about symmetry. Trivia time. According to the Index Chaotica, the average ascension lasts exactly 49 seconds in real space, but can span centuries within the warp. That's how long it takes to destroy a soul and rebuild it into a weapon. When it ends, you're standing, taller, heavier, brighter. The world looks different because your vision now cuts through probability. You see every possible version of this moment. Yourself triumphant, yourself dead, yourself never born. You're all of them and none. You laugh, or try to. The sound shatters nearby stone. Your followers scream in ecstasy. They call you prince. The title feels wrong in your mouth, but you let it sit. There anyway. It's the only thing left that sounds like a name. You look at your hands, claws, maybe, or talons, or shifting shapes that can't decide what to be. Power flows through you like a storm. That doesn't end. You think, I did it. Lore masters still debate whether demon princes are truly immortal. Technically, yes, they can't die as mortals do, but immortality isn't the same as freedom. You'll learn that soon. For now, you revel. You command your armies to burn a nearby world. You warp reality for amusement. Bend gravity into knots. You kill a saint by thinking about it. Everything feels effortless. Until the Lord of Change looks at you again. You mean to thank it. Your patron. Your benefactor. The one who made you divine. But when you open your mouth, your words are not gratitude. They're vows, promises, oaths of eternal servitude you don't remember composing. It's not possession. It's design. The desire to serve is now woven into the molecular pattern of your existence. You don't want freedom anymore, not because you're enslaved, but because the concept itself has been removed. You bow, not because it commands you, but because you cannot. Conceive of not bowing. The demon gestures toward a swirling rift. Your first task awaits. You step through, not compelled, not forced, just incapable of imagining any alternative. Historians still argue what happens next, whether the newly made demon prince enters a training phase, or simply begins existing in the endless war of the warp. You don't remember. You're too overwhelmed by the intoxication of it all. For a moment, a perfect, fragile moment, you think this is heaven, the kind that requires screams to function. You're wrong, of course. Every demon prince thinks they've won the game until they realize they're just another piece on the board. At first, you think you're free. That's the cruelest part. You stride across burning worlds, command armies of creatures who chant your name like a weapon. You feel the warp bending round your will, reshaping itself to your moods. Planets fall. Cities twist into screaming glass. Reality itself shivers when you laugh. Lore masters still debate whether demon princes create their own power or borrow it. Some claim they are living conduits, extensions of their god's intent. Others argue they are independent entities who draw from the warp like a storm drinks from the sea. Both are true, and neither is, because when you are the storm, there's no difference between what you want and what's already happening. You think you have agency. That's the first lie for decades. You act as though the universe now belongs to you. You choose battles, carve your mark into the fabric of reality, lead warbands that blot out suns. Your voice alone can drive mortals insane or fill them with impossible faith. The warp's energy flows through you like music, like meaning. Historians still argue how much of a demon prince's personality survives the transformation. Most agree fragments remain, but they're distorted, stretched thin across dimensions until intent becomes echo. You still feel like yourself, but the thoughts you have are no longer entirely yours. Sometimes you catch it, a flicker. You think of a plan, a glorious act of vengeance, and realize it's already been done, not by you, but through you, as if someone else had the same thought first and placed it in your mind. That's when the laughter starts. You don't hear it often, just enough to remind you it's there. The God of Change doesn't shout orders. He doesn't need to. His will flows through the smallest decisions, the way you raise your hand before striking, the direction your armies march, the moment you choose to spare an enemy. Every choice aligns perfectly with a plan you'll never see. You begin and to notice patterns. Your desires match your master's will too neatly. You want what he wants, when he wants it. You call it divine harmony. You call it destiny. You don't call it what it is. Conditioning, trivia time. There's a rare event in the warp, called the dissonance. It happens when two demon princes of the same god act with conflicting intent. The warp literally rewrites one of them out of existence to restore coherence, free will, meet quality control. For centuries, you wage war. You burn imperial fleets, tear open rifts, lead crusades that stain the stars. You think you carving a legend. Really, you're writing footnotes in someone else's script. Lore masters still debate whether Tzeentch's servants ever fail by accident. When a demon prince loses, it's often because the loss itself was part of the plan. The God of Change values outcome less than motion. Victory and defeat are just colors he mixes for contrast. You experience that firsthand. One campaign against a stubborn imperial fortress drags on, longer than it should. You make mistakes, small ones, you think. But in the warp, small errors ripple forever. The mortals resist longer. Unexpected, a priest recites an ancient hymn you thought lost. Something shifts. You win. Technically, the planet burns. The Imperials perish. But the ritual fails. The energy doesn't align. And in the stillness after victory, you feel something colder. Banfear, disappointment. It's not yours. It's his. The war darkens. Your vision blurs. Your body trembles like a puppet in the hand of an angry child. You fall to your knees. The laughter stops. Silence. That's when the pain begins. It's not punishment in the way mortals understand it. There's no whipping, no fire, no scream. Your essence begins to fold inward, piece by piece. Your form reshapes itself against your will. Eyes multiply and vanish, limbs emerge, twist, and sink back into flesh. You watch your own body refuse to obey. You try to resist, and resistance becomes fuel for further change. This is the true gift of Tzeentch, the knowledge that nothing yours is permanent. Even your failures are just opportunities for a creative remodeling. When it ends, you look into a shard of mirrored armor and don't recognize the creature staring back. Feathers, scales, crystalline horns, none of them familiar. You realize your form isn't yours. It never was. Historians still argue how many remakings a demon prince can endure before disintegration. Some claim there's no limit. Others say after the 9th reshaping, individuality dissolves. You're somewhere between number 2 and oblivion. You understand the message now. Power is conditional. Ownership is temporary. You exist at the pleasure of a god whose moods change faster than galaxies spin. You tell yourself it's fine. You even start to believe it. That's the genius of chaos. It doesn't just enslave you. It makes you grateful for the caller. You resume the war, you kill. You build, you burn. You're more careful now. Or maybe just more obedient. The strings are lighter when you stop pulling against them. You still think, occasionally, about the human you once were. Not out of nostalgia, but curiosity. You wonder what he would think if he could see you now. A thing of impossible power, and able to decide whether it's master or pet. The answer doesn't matter. You're too busy playing your part in the endless theater of the warped and far away. The architect of fate watches, pleased, because the illusion of power is the best chain ever forged. The first remaking isn't your worst punishment, but it's the one that stays with you. You can still feel it. The slow, deliberate rearranging of every molecule, every thought, as if an unseen artist was bored with the old design. You were meditating aboard your flagship when it began. No warning, no voice, just the sensation of your own being. Only forgetting what shape it was supposed to have. Lore masters still debate whether remaking is a correction, a lesson, or just divine whimsy. Tzeentch doesn't explain. He demonstrates. Your armor bends round you like liquid glass. Flesh melts, reforms, then melts again. You feel your organs migrating. A heart in your shoulder, lungs in your legs. A dozen eyes blink from your chest, each one seeing in a different direction. Each whispering thoughts you don't remember having. You try to scream, but sound becomes color. You try to move, but movement becomes memory. Pain stops meaning anything once it starts inventing new senses to contain it. Historians still argue whether Daemon Princes can die from remaking. They can't. That's the problem. You can't even black out. Every instant is recorded in exquisite, flawless detail. You'll relive it 1,000 times in the dreams you no longer have. When it ends, you look down and see a stranger. Your skin has hardened into armor-like plates, wings, or maybe tendrils pulse from your back. You're bigger now, less human, more idea. But your reflection doesn't matter. What matters is the lesson carved into your soul. You are not yours. You remember the words of the Lord of Change from your ascension. Your ambition pleases him. You used to think that was a compliment. Now you know it was a warning. Trivia for you. In the Liber Daemonica, there's a passage describing a demon prince who begged Tzeentch to restore his old face. The god did, but placed it on the back of his head. The lesson: never ask a question if you aren't ready for an answer that laughs after the remaking. Your warband looks at you differently. Some kneel, some tremble, some whisper that their lord is favored. You don't correct them. Fear and faith sound the same when spoken aloud. You continue the campaign. The Imperium calls your name in prayers of fear. Inquisitors write reports about you, sketching crude sigils on parchment that burn tush before they finish. You're famous now. And that's when you realize fame is another word for a target. Lore masters still debate whether the gods truly care about mortal victories in your experience. They don't. They care about narrative, about contrast. Tzeentch in particular delights in balance. Not peace, but tension. For every triumph, a disaster. For every revelation, a lie. You begin to suspect your own success is just the setup for someone else's downfall. Then, another whisper comes. Not a command, just intent. You feel it like static behind your eyes. You move before you decide to move. The fleet turns. The next battle begins. You fight without understanding why, and somehow, that feels right. You win again. Of course you do, the gods hate predictability. But they love irony. Every victory tightens the leash. Sometimes, during those quiet moments when your armies sleep and the warp calms, You think you can feel the god's gaze again. Not cruel this time. Not mocking. Curious. You imagine him looking through you the way a painter examines a brush. How far can this one go before it breaks? You start to understand the economy of chaos. You don't serve because you must. You serve because the concept of must no longer applies. Service is existence. Disobedience is annihilation. Historians still argue if demon princes retain moral judgment. You know the answer. Morality requires choice, and choice requires perspective. You have neither. The next remaking comes quietly. Like a bad thought, you wake to find your wings gone, replaced by crystalline structures that hum with warp energy. You don't question it. The god gives, the god takes, the god paints. You stop counting the transformations. Each new form feels like another paragraph in an autobiography you didn't write. You begin to measure time not in years or battles, but in shapes. Trivia break. The Ordo Malleus maintains a list of known demon princes, annotated with their transformations. Over half the entries end with status unknown, presumed altered beyond recognition. It's bureaucracy's way of saying we lost track of the monster. You should hate all this. You should rage. But hatred requires a center, a sense of self stable enough to tame the emotion. Yours dissolved somewhere between your fifth limb and your seventh set of eyes. You are not angry. You're aware, and that awareness is what Tzeentch wants. Awareness without rebellion. Understanding without action. You've become the perfect scholar of your own servitude. You command your forces again. You conquer. You lose. You rebuild. Each war is another experiment. Each defeat another revision. Your form changes less violently now. Not because you've pleased. You're a god. But because you stopped resisting the sculptor's hand. Lore masters still debate what true obedience looks like in the warp. You could tell them. It's silence, the moment you stop asking. Why? One day, while gazing into the void between worlds, you think you glimpse something, a figure made of shifting symbols watching from afar. It's not Tzeentch, not exactly. It's the idea of him. Condensed, you feel the approval radiating from it. And, impossibly, you smile, because for the first time in eternity, you've learned the trick to surviving the gods. You don't win. You don't lose. You adapt. The second punishment is quieter, colder, and infinitely worse. It begins not with fire, but with stillness. You're in your sanctum, surrounded by relics that hum with war presence. When your limbs start to lock, at first, you think it's another remaking. You even brace for it. But no pain comes, no transformation, just fizzing. Lore masters still debate what happens to demon princes who fail their patrons repeatedly. Some are dissolved back into the warp, some are banished, and some, the unlucky ones, are preserved, conscious, intact, silent. You realize too late which. Fate is yours. Your wings harden first. Then your skin crystallizes, blue and translucent. The process spreads, slow and deliberate. You can feel every molecule solidify. You try to shout, but your jaw locks halfway open. The air around you hums with divine amusement. There's no voice this time, only understanding. You've been made into a monument, a symbol of imperfection. You will stand as warning to others. Historians still argue whether the warp has a sense of irony. You could tell them yes, because the god of change, the one who cannot stand still, has turned you into stone. Trivia. Within the Eye of Terror, there are entire valleys filled with crystalline figures. Each one was once a demon prince. The locals call it the Choir of the Silent. Because sometimes, if the wind hits just right, they sing. You spend 67 years like that, not dead. Not dreaming, just watching. Time stretches into something unrecognizable. Armies rise and fall around you. Mortals enter your ship. worship, fight, die. And you can't blink, you can't speak. You can only think, and thinking becomes its own kind of torture. You remember your victories, you remember your arrogance, you replay every battle, every command, every moment of self-congratulation, and you start to see the pattern. Every triumph, every plan, every independent act was placed there, seated in your mind like bait. You weren't strategizing, you were performing. Historians still argue if Daemon Princes retain free thought under divine restraint. They do. That's the cruelty. The gods don't want mindless obedience. They want awareness, the realization that you've always been their reflection. Eventually, your fleet continues. Without you, your lieutenants fight among themselves. Some claim your crystallization is a test. Others call it your end. One tries to free you, a sorcerer who carves runes round your body for weeks. His spell almost works. Tzeentch rewards him with spontaneous combustion. The smell lingers for years. The universe moves on. You remain. You lose track of time. You count the passing of stars. You learn to find patterns in warp light, to measure decades by the rhythm of cosmic storms. And then something strange happens. You stop caring. The silence becomes familiar. The stillness, almost soothing. You start to think that this absence of will, is what peace feels like. Trivia. In the archives of the Black Library, there's a sealed entry describing an Astartes named Xathirion the Still. It notes that his consciousness was observed dreaming despite petrification. It ends with a warning. Do not wake the dreamer. In the stillness, you come to a realization. Freedom was never taken from you. It was a mirage. You never had it. Not as a mortal. Not as a prince. Not even now. You were born in chains. You just didn't notice until they stopped moving. And for the first time in centuries, you feel something like understanding. Lore masters still debate what makes a being enlightened in the warp. Some say it's knowledge. Others surrender. You learn that they are the same thing. When the crystal finally cracks, it's not sudden, a soft sound. Like glass sighing, movement returns to your fingers, your jaw, your mind. You fall forward. The statue collapsing into dust. The air tastes of lightning. You expect rage. You expect pain. Instead, you feel calm. Obedience comes naturally now. It's not submission. It's clarity. You rise. Wings reforming in a shimmer of colorless flame. Your first words are not prayers or curses. You simply whisper, I understand. Historians still argue whether Tzeentch ever forgives. He doesn't need to. Forgiveness implies wrongdoing, and to a god of infinite contradiction, even failure has purpose. You weren't punished for losing. You were educated. You returned to command. Your followers kneel, trembling, expecting divine wrath. Instead, you give orders in perfect calm. Every move you make now is measured, deliberate, efficient. You don't improvise anymore. You don't question. You just act. This is what perfection looks like in the service of chaos. Precision without emotion. Trivia. The Mechanicus once recorded a battle against a demon whose behavior was described as eerily consistent. They couldn't identify him. But you know it was you. The logs end mid-sentence with the words pattern complete. You've become what your god wanted all along. An instrument that tunes itself. When the next whisper comes, you don't wait for it to finish. You already know what to do. And somewhere, in the kaleidoscope of the warp, the god of change smiles. You've stopped fighting the current. You've become it. Obedience becomes your new shape. It fits better than any body you've worn before. You don't even remember what resistance felt like. Every command from the warp flows through you like instinct. You act before thought. You obey before hearing. It's not servitude. It's synchronization. Lore masters still debate whether absolute. Obedience in the warp represents enlightenment or extinction. Some argue that surrendering will is a kind of transcendence, a merger with divinity. Others claim it's the final death of the self. You don't care which they're right about. You're both. When you return to the Long War, your name echoes again, this time with reverence rather than fear. To mortals, you're a god. To other demon princes, you're a rival, but you know the truth. You're an extension, a finger in the endless hand of Tzeentch. Historians still argue whether the gods can truly multitask through. They're servants. They can. You're living proof. You feel his mind move through yours, adjusting, calculating, rewriting. You are part of an equation that never stops solving itself. You no longer need the spectacle of chaos to command devotion. The mortals who follow you sense something different. Precision, purpose. You no longer lead with emotion, but with inevitability. Every warband that joins you becomes a perfect cog in a vast, invisible mechanism. Trivia. Among cultists of Tzeentch, there's a myth about the Quiet Prince, a demon who never shouts, never rages, yet wins every battle. They say his armies move like clockwork, guided not by orders but by pattern. You never told them it was you. You didn't have to. Myths travel faster when they're true. You've become an obedient instrument, and obedience is efficient. Your wars are no longer random crusades of destruction. They're equations written in blood. You conquer worlds not to rule them, but to test the flow of destiny. You retreat not from weakness, but because the next sequence demands it. Lore masters still debate whether chaos has strategy or only chaos. The answer depends on perspective. To mortals, your campaigns seem erratic. Victories followed by self-sabotage, alliances formed and broken without cause. But viewed from the warp, it all aligns. Every misstep serves a greater symmetry, you know. Longer need to see. Your first true test comes soon after your release. You are sent to a shrine world deep in Imperial territory. The command is simple. Crop faith with faith. You understand. Immediately, to destroy devotion, you must mimic it. You descend upon the world in disguise, not as a roaring god, but as a saint. Historians still argue if the chaos gods allow true disguise or if mortals simply can't perceive their corruption. It doesn't matter. You take on a form so perfect, so radiant, that even the sisters of battle kneel when you pass. You heal the sick. You bless the dying. You preach restraint, humility, piety. Every word you speak is twisted truth. Enough holiness to be credible. Enough poison to seed rot. Trivia. There was once an imperial saint named Lethra who turned out to be a Tzeentch demon in disguise. You're the reason that story exists. The ecclesiarchy suppressed her accords. But the cults remember. They whisper her hymns. Backward in your honor. For 3 years, you play your role flawlessly. The faithful adore you. Miracles occur daily. No one suspects that every blessing carries contamination. Microscopic threads of warp influence woven into the prayers themselves. When the time comes to reveal the lie, you do it quietly. The veil lifts. The faithful look upon their saint and see the truth. A creature of impossible symmetry, feathers burning with meaning, eyes that reflect futures they can't survive. The shock doesn't just kill them, it ruptures reality. Lore masters still debate the psychic phenomenon known as the Shattered Faith event. Thousands of souls ripped free at once, screaming into the warp through the wound of collective betrayal. It fed Tzeentch for centuries. You don't celebrate. You don't even feel pride. You did what was required. The planet collapses into madness. Faith inverted into frenzy. The god is pleased. You feel his warmth. Distant, subtle. Like the glow of a sun seen through 1,000 mirrors. Trivia. In the aftermath, the Administratum reclassified the planet as unsalvageable anomaly. The coordinates were stricken from Imperial charts. They renamed it Saint's End. You never told them that's exactly what you called it to Dot afterward. You expect another transformation, another punishment. None comes instead. You are left in peace, which in the warp is the rarest and most unsettling gift of all. You wander your flagship's halls, surrounded by silence, waiting for the next whisper Dot it doesn't come for. Yes, you begin to wonder if you've been forgotten. Then you realize that's impossible. Forgetting isn't in Tzeentch's nature. Even absence is intentional. Maybe this quiet is another lesson. Maybe the lesson is that there's no lesson. Historians still argue what motivates Tzeentch. Cruelty, curiosity, or boredom. You suspect the answer is yes. In the stillness, you begin to think. Not rebel, not question, just consider. What is obedience when there are no commands? Does a tool have purpose when the craftsman rests? You decide it does, because the craftsman's rest is part of the work. You maintain your army. You keep order. You refine your rituals. You wait. Perfectly aligned, perfectly silent, and when the next whisper finally comes, faint and distant, you don't even have to listen. You already know what it will say. Serve. And you will. Because by now, obedience isn't something you do. It's what you are. When the next command comes, it's not a roar in your mind. It's a whisper that sounds like your own voice. You're sent again into the Imperium. But this time not as conqueror, not even as saint. You go as rumor. Lawmasters still debate how demons infiltrate the material realm so deeply that no trace of warp energy follows. Some claim Tzeentch folds them through dreams. Others that they slip inside stories until people start believing them real. You use both. You're reborn on a hive world, wearing mortal flesh that sweats, bleeds, and aches. For the first time in centuries, you feel temperature, hunger, sleep. You almost call it mercy. Your orders are simple. Dismantle faith from within, not by destroying it, but by perfecting it. You become Brother Preacher Arden. Your sermons are humble, stripped of grandeur. You speak of balance, of destiny, of how even the Emperor must yield to the pattern of fate. The words sound holy enough that even the most pious nod. Historians still argue whether heresy begins with rebellion or logic. You prove it starts with sincerity. For 10 years, you live among mortals. You eat their food, share their fears, listen to their confessions. They tell you secrets, real, aching human secrets, and you realize something you hadn't in years. Mortals aren't weak because they die. They're strong because they can. Trivia. The Apocrypha of St. Garen mentions a preacher who convinced an entire hive to pray for the Emperor's evolution. The text was later burned. The Inquisition never found the preacher. They didn't need to. You'd already left. Your work complete. It starts slowly. A word here, a phrase there. Change is divine. The Emperor grows through us. To question is to serve. By the time anyone notices, entire congregations are reciting scripture. Backward, the church bells toll every dawn, perfectly in tune with the rhythm of the warp. No demons appear. No fire rains down. Nothing happens, because it already did, the moment they believed. They stopped believing him. Lore masters still debate whether faith can be corrupted without magic. You know it can. Words are older than sorcery. You could have ended it there, slipped back into the immaterium with another victory. But Tzeentch doesn't measure success in simplicity. You receive a new whisper, turn your disguise inward. So you start to doubt yourself. You question your mission. You confess to your own followers that you fear you've strayed. You cry. They comfort you. Their devotion deepens. You've turned repentance into reinforcement. This is the saint's deception. Holiness as a contagion. Trivia. An inquisitor named Vaughn once theorized that faith itself may host parasitic mems. He was executed for heresy. His words weren't. Wrong. Just premature. Years pass. Your body ages. Wrinkles appear. Your hair grays. You look in a mirror one morning and almost forget what's beneath. Mortality feels real again, and for a flicker of a moment, you miss being a god. The thought disgusts you. You crush it. Historians still argue whether Daemon Princes experience nostalgia. Theologians claim no. The warp knows no past. Only constant becoming. You disagree. Memory is another kind of mutation. A way for pain to adapt. Eventually. You decide the illusion has run its course. The ecclesiarchy begins investigating. Rumors spread that your sermons contain contradictions. Good. You start preaching in secret. Smaller gatherings, darker corners, more honest conversations. You teach them to question everything, except you. You can feel Tzeentch's amusement growing. That low vibration in the air like laughter from behind a closed door. The hive begins to fracture. Conflicting sects emerge, each believing they hold the true interpretation of your words. Fights break out, then riots, then fire. Loremasters still debate whether Tzeentch values chaos for its own sake or for the outcomes it enables. You suspect it's both. Every fallen soul is both fuel and experiment. When the first cathedral collapses, you don't flee. You sit inside, watching stained glass melt in the heat, listening to screams. Become hymns, you finally speak aloud to your master. Was that what you wanted? The reply comes as laughter. Not mockery. Delight. You realize the truth. He doesn't want anything. He is wanting. Constant, eternal wanting. You're part of that hunger now. Trivia. The last report from that hive world described a preacher made of living light walking calmly through the flames before vanishing. The transmission ended mid-sentence. The system was later purged. Official cause. Reactor failure. You awaken again in the warp. Your mortal disguise dissolving like dust in wind. Your demonic form returns. Taller. Colder. More perfect. Not a remaking this time, but a polishing, the reward for flawless service. Historians still argue whether Tzeentch truly rewards loyalty. Maybe he does. Once, as a reminder of what you lose next time, you think of the humans you lived among. Their warmth, their voices, their fears. You feel something like affection, quickly extinguished. That part of you isn't permitted anymore. You're summoned before your patron's court. A place that isn't a place, filled with geometry that hums in colors you can taste. You kneel, as you always do. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The air arranges itself into meaning. You did well. You'll do us next time. You bow lower, not in shame, in gratitude, because the God of change is honest. In his own way, he never promises joy, only motion. Loremasters still debate whether enlightenment under chaos is possible. You've reached a conclusion. Enlightenment isn't light. It's understanding. The dark so thoroughly that it stops scaring you. And as the laughter fades, you realize something quietly terrifying. You've become the same thing you once feared. An idea pretending to be alive. A perfect servant with no question left to ask. You think you've reached stability. And that's exactly when Tzeentch takes it away. The fortress you build in the warp is a masterpiece. A labyrinth of impossible towers, floating bridges, and rivers that flow upward into spirals of fire. Every wall hums with wards. Every corridor shifts to new alignments with each passing hour. You've named it Virid's equation. Not a place, but a proof, a demonstration that even chaos can be structured if the architect is clever enough. Loremasters still debate whether a demon prince can truly possess land in the warp. Territory there is a concept, not geography. But you make it real. You anchor your fortress with will, with worship, with memory. You craft your own domain, a throne, world worthy of a demigod, and for a time, it works. You feel something dangerously close to satisfaction. Armies pledge allegiance. Other princes visit, seeking counsel or alliance. Your name carries weight again, not as servant, but as sovereign. Historians still argue whether Tzeentch allows his servants to build kingdoms. He does, because every kingdom is another test. The fortress grows, and with it, your confidence. You begin experimenting, creating demon constructs from fractal equations, servants born of thought alone, their forms collapsing and reforming. Every few seconds, you design labyrinths where each wrong turn costs centuries. You build altars that pray to themselves. You begin to think you've found balance. Chaos refined into art, trivia. The Grimoire Infernalist describes a fortress in the warp that contained more doors than atoms. Its master known only as the Geometer. No one realized the name was yours written in code, scrambled by your own hand. But nothing in Tzeentch's realm stays constant for long. The first sign comes as a sound, a low hum beneath reality's skin. Then the geometry starts to shift without your command. At first, it's subtle. A corridor shortens by a meter. A door appears in the wrong direction. Then, entire towers begin folding into themselves. Rivers of fire run backward. Statues of your likeness melt into shapeless glass. You sense the change before you comprehend it. The god's attention has turned elsewhere. You've become predictable, and predictability is deafening. The warp. Lore masters still debate whether divine neglect is worse than divine wrath. You'd argue they're the same thing. You try to hold the fortress together, pouring thought and power into the structure. But the more you focus, the faster it unravels. Logic betrays you. The symbols you carved to bind reality now rewrite themselves into gib. Rishtut, your generals vanish first, absorbed into walls that forget they were solid. Then your servants dissolve into smoke mid-command. You shout. The echo answers in your own voice. But reversed, mocking. You realize what's happening. You've built too well. You've tried to give shape to something that should never have won. Chaos abhors stability. You've committed the only unforgivable sin, creating order. Historians still argue if the fall of Virid's equation was divine punishment or natural consequence to you. There's no difference. You stand atop the highest spire, watching your masterpiece fold into a single point of light. Every layer of meaning collapses, every effort unmade. You understand that this isn't just destruction. It's correction, a return to equilibrium. Then the fortress is gone, not ruined. Erased, no rubble, no dust, no memory. You hover in empty space, surrounded by nothing but the echo of what once was trivia. Some cults speak of the Vanishing Prince, a demon whose fortress was devoured by his own perfection. They claim if you listen closely during warp storms, you can hear the faint hum of his lost citadel, looping endlessly on itself, for the first time in eternity. You're truly alone. No armies, no altars, no followers chanting your name, only silence, the most terrifying sound in all creation. You drift through the immaterium, your form dimming, without worship or domain. Even a demon prince can fade. You start to unravel, your consciousness thinning like smoke, and then you feel something, a pulse, soft but insistent, a call. You follow it, not because you're told to, but because you can't not. It leads you to a realm without shape or color, a dimension between dimensions. There, you find fragments, shards of your fortress, echoes of your own thoughts still orbiting each other like debris around a dead star. You gather them, piece by piece, memory by memory. The fragments whisper. They tell you that you're not losing. You're changing. That this is what Tzeentch wanted all along. A prince who can exist without a throne. Lore masters still debate whether the warp rewards adaptability. You know now it's the only rule that matters. You rebuild. but differently this time. No walls, no spires, no structure. Your new domain is motion, a cloud of fractal light that shifts with your moods. You call it the unfinished equation. It cannot collapse, because it never ends. Trivia. Imperial psychers sometimes report glimpsing a drifting storm of colors shaped like wings and eyes, whispering equations that solve themselves. They call it the ghost of Virith. You prefer that name. You're no longer a lord of land or fortress. You're a concept, a pattern in flux, the prince who lost everything and became. The space between, and somewhere, beyond perception, you feel it. The faintest ripple of approval. Your god doesn't laugh this time. He just watches. You drift through the warp like a thought that refuses to finish. The fortress is gone. The followers are gone. Even your name feels like a half-remembered syllable, fading in and out of meaning. You should be lost. But that word doesn't apply anymore. You are not lost. You're unplaced. Lore masters still debate whether demon princes can exist independently once stripped of their domains. Some claim they simply dissolve, returning to their god's will. Others whisper of wanderers, beings that persist out of habit, living echoes of divine experimentation. You are one of those echoes. You move through layers of reality that no mortal could survive. Time here is liquid. Space folds like origami. You see planets being born and dying in the same breath. You pass creatures so vast they use galaxies as stepping stones. They ignore you as you ignore them. In this endless ocean, even gods are currents. Historians still argue if the warp has direction. They say it's all chaos, all flux. But you've learned there is a kind of current. Not spatial, but narrative. Everything moves toward its own irony. You are no exception. You sense that you are being pulled somewhere, not by command, but by alignment. The warp wants you in motion, because stasis offends it, and so you wander. Trivia. The Ordo Malleus keeps records of wandering anomalies, warp entities that appear across multiple systems with no pattern or allegiance. The most stable signature among them matches yours, though the Imperium assumes it's a storm pattern, not a mind. You rive. If rival can even be said to mean anything in a place where reality thins like worn fabric, a half-dead system, its sun bloated and crimson, its planets stripped by ancient wars, you can sense Tzeentch's touch here, faint but familiar, like an old perfume on burnt cloth. It's not coincidence. It never is. You find the remnants of a chaos cult, broken and leaderless. Their last rituals failed decades ago. They've been killing one another out of boredom. When they see you, they kneel instantly. To them, you are salvation, a god returned. To you, they're just material. You don't command them with speeches, you whisper. You let them think your words are thoughts they had themselves. You guide them toward creation, not destruction, not war. You teach them to build something pointless, a great wheel of metal and bone. They don't understand it, and you don't explain. Lore masters still debate whether demon princes act on divine instruction or pure instinct. You can't tell anymore. The line between order and habit vanished long ago. The wheel grows. It hums with warp energy, spinning faster each day. The cultists feed it their dead, their prayers, their madness. It becomes a generator of pure entropy, a machine that doesn't do anything except become. You watch it with the faint affection of an artist watching a mistake evolve into style. Trivia. Centuries later, an exploratorship will discover the ruins of that world. The log will describe a skeletal structure still rotating without friction, its axis pointed toward nothing. The Magos will classify it as Artifact Sigma 47, unaware that it still whispers your name. You stay for a while, basking in the simplicity of repetition. The machine spins, the cult chants, the universe ignores you for once. Nothing changes. And then, of course, it does. The sky tears open, and new presence floods the system, not from above, but from within. You feel it like a mirror cracking, familiar, invasive, equal, another demon. Prince has arrived. You recognize the signature immediately. One of Tzeentch's many champions, eager, ambitious, still young in madness. Historians still argue whether demon princes can coexist. Peacefully, they can't. Not because they hate each other, but because the gods prefer drama over balance. The newcomer greets you with arrogance. He claims to be the god's chosen instrument, sent to claim this system in his name. You listen in silence, wings folding like curtains. Then, quietly, you tell him the truth. He didn't send either of us. He doesn't believe you. None of them ever do. The duel isn't physical. It's conceptual. Reality bends round your wills. The sky becomes an equation of violence. Each strike rewrites the laws of causality. You erase him 3 times. He comes back 4. You invert his soul. He replaces it with rage. You fight until the machine beneath you splits, spilling pure entropy into space. Then, as all things do, the pattern breaks. He falters first. One wrong thought, one predictable move. You seize it, fold it, return it to him as irony. His name collapses, his existence unthreads. When it's over, nothing remains of him but a faint laugh, already fading. Lore masters still debate what happens when a demon prince dies. Some say they return to their god. Others believe they scatter as pure warp. Noise, memories repurposed. You know the truth. There's no such thing as death here. There's only redistribution. You stand amid the ruins. The cult is gone, consumed by the backlash. The wheel still spins, slower now, steady as a heartbeat. You watch it and feel something strange. Not victory, not loss, balance, trivia. Some Mechanicus texts mention a planet of stillstorms, where no communications function and no warp presence can be detected. They say the wind there sounds like whispering prayers. That's where you leave your machine. You turn away from it, feeling your god's distant amusement once again. You fought, built, destroyed, obeyed, and through it all, you remain unbroken, not because you're strong, but because you're flexible. You drift onward, a wanderer without destination, an instrument without orchestra. Chaos doesn't need you to lead or conquer anymore. You're what it releases into the universe when it wants to. Remind creation that everything, even divinity, can unravel gracefully. Historians still argue what purpose you serve now. They don't understand that's the point. You don't serve a purpose. You are the pause between causes, the question that never ends, and somewhere, beyond galaxies, you hear the faintest whisper of laughter. It sounds almost proud. You learn over time that even chaos has habits, and that's what makes it dangerous, because the moment something repeats, even slightly, Tzeentch grows bored. You drift through the warp again, moving without direction. Fragments of broken worlds float past you, half-burned temples, frozen fleets, bones the size of mountains. All of them once belonged to something that thought it mattered. You used to think that. True. Now, you know better. Lore masters still debate whether the warp learns. Some claim it's reactive. Others say it's aware. You've seen enough to know both are true. It learns by destroying her. Lesson. You sense the next correction before it happens. A ripple runs through your form. A tremor that starts in thought and spreads through existence. It's not pain. Not yet. Just inevitability. Something about you has become predictable again. Historians still argue whether gods grow irritated or simply efficient. You suspect Tzeentch doesn't feel at all. He edits. You brace yourself for punishment. But it doesn't come with violence. Instead, the world around you folds. Not breaking, not bending, just rephrasing. You're in mid-thought when the sky shifts from liquid to dust. The stars change names, time hiccups. You realize you're standing on solid ground, a planet, real space. Again, this isn't exile or mercy. It's adjustment. You glance down. You're wearing armor. Mortal in shape. Perfectly symmetrical. Blue-black like twilight all. Your wings are gone. Your talons replaced by hands. You look almost human again. The irony burns. Trivia. The Index Diabolicus describes a phenomenon called dimensional reset, in which powerful warp entities are forcibly recontextualized into new realities. It lists new survivors. You're the exception. You feel the gods. Will pressing gently behind your eyes. Act. Don't repeat dots so you move. The planet is a ruin. An old imperial colony reduced to dust and static. Machines litter the surface, rusted and have swallowed by sand. In the distance, you see the flicker of light, a signal repeating endlessly. You walk toward it. Lore masters still debate whether Daemon Princes retain memory after Reformation. They do. The gods just make sure it hurts to remember. When you reach the source, you find a single functioning Vox Tower. Its message plays on loop. Glory to the Emperor. All is well. Glory to the Emperor. All is well. You listen to it for a day. Then two. Then you start laughing. Quietly. At first. Then uncontrollably. The machine doesn't care. It keeps repeating. Mechanical faith in perfect rhythm. And that's when you realize why you're here. You've become too stable, too centered. The god of change cannot stand constancy. Even in devotion, you were efficient, obedient, useful, and therefore predictable. Now, he wants noise. Historians still argue if the gods destroy their own servants deliberately or simply through neglect. The truth is pettier. They remodel them when the entertainment fades. The laughter stops. You stare at the Vox Tower. Then you touch it. The metal ripples under your palm. The words inside its message bend. The next time it plays, the recording says something else. Change is the Emperor's true gift. You didn't mean to, or maybe you did. Either way, it's begun. Over weeks, the message spreads, transmitted by forgotten relays, repeated by broken satellites. The words mutate, infecting language itself. By the time Imperial ships arrive, the planet is gone, replaced by an exact replica. Except now the sky hums softly in the key of madness. Trivia. The Administratum Anomalies Register still lists that world as an verifiable phenomenon 733A. Survey teams report identical coordinates, but every recorded visit yields a different landscape. You realize that the god hasn't punished you. He's given you a role, a correction. You are now the variable that breaks the equation before it settles. It's elegant in its way. You no longer lead, or conquer, or even obey. You just interrupt. You drift across the galaxy again, appearing wherever stability gathers, an empire to calm, a war to even, a religion to certain. You don't destroy them directly. You just change one small thing, a word, a memory. Assembles, the rest collapses on its own. Historians still argue whether chaos ever ends. You could tell them it doesn't need to. It only needs to continue slightly offbeat. Sometimes you wonder if Tzeentch watches your work. There's no laughter anymore, no approval or scorn. Just silence, the kind that feels like a smile. You suspect that's all the validation you'll ever get, and then, mid-act, somewhere between a corrupted shrine and a written prayer, you feel the shift again. Another pattern broken. But this time, it's not you being edited. The warp itself shudders. Equations unwrite themselves. You sense panic. Not from mortals, but from demons. That's new. Lore masters still debate whether the gods ever make mistakes. You just witnessed one. Reality flickers, colors invert. You hear whispers not in your head, but behind your thoughts. Thousands of versions of yourself speaking at once. You see your own timeline fracturing into endless branches, each path, each choice, repeating differently. The god is rewinding. He's correcting himself. The irony is exquisite. You, the breaker of repetition, caught inside your master's own loop. You try to laugh again, but the sound comes out wrong. Half sigh, half scream, the universe folds, and you're back where you started, alone, adrift between realities, with no fortress, no body, no anchor. Trivia. In the Treatise Obscura, there's a single footnote about an entity that's self-erased. Mere observation, leaving only residual humor in the warp. Scholars call it the Paradox Prince. You call it autobiography. And as the warp resits round you, as every moment collapses into the next, you finally grasp the truth that scholars, inquisitors, and mad prophets have all missed. Even chaos gets tired of itself, and when it does, it starts over again and again, until someone or something breaks the loop. That someone, apparently, is you. You don't know whether to be proud or horrified. So you do the only reasonable thing left. You start laughing again, because you realize the joke's not cruel. It's just infinite. The laughter doesn't end this time. It stretches, looping across realities until it becomes rhythm, the heartbeat of a paradox that shouldn't exist. You drift through the aftermath, watching shards of timelines bump against each other like debris after an explosion. Each one shows a version of you, a slightly different tone, a slightly different choice. You are everywhere, and nowhere makes sense. Lore masters still debate whether Daemon Princes can self-replicate across dimensions, or if such echoes are divine artifacts. You'd tell them, though. Difference doesn't matter. When you serve Tzeentch, the line between creation and consequence dissolves. You're still laughing when the reflection finds you. It looks like you, moves like you, even thinks like you, but younger, sharper, still full of conviction. The reflection is from a timeline where you never understood obedience, where rebellion still burns like oxygen. It speaks. First, voice edged with certainty. You forgot what you were. Historians still argue whether warp entities can argue with themselves. They can. The gods encourage it. It's how new paradoxes form. You ask the reflection if it's another test. It smiles, which is the same thing as saying yes. You call yourself a servant. It says, but servants are still seen. You're invisible now, a ghost in. You're a master's archive. You tilt your head. And what does that make you? The hypothesis you abandoned. Then it lunges. The fight doesn't happen in space. It happens in possibility. You clash across outcomes, rewriting each other's pasts mid-sentence. You strike, and your reflection dissolves into thought, only to reappear behind you, rewriting your intention. You counter with irony, turning its memories into questions. Lore masters still debate whether warp combat is metaphor or fact. To demons, both mean survival. You realize, too late, that this isn't combat. It's correction. The warp is purging redundancy. One of you must go. Trivia. The Demon Codex Ultima mentions mirror duels, rare events where identical demons annihilate each other to restore equilibrium. The text notes that the victor never remembers which side they were. The reflection falters first. You seize the gap, reach inside its thought, and pull. It unravels into light. Not death, just deletion. But something clings to you as it fades, a memory not your own. You see through its eyes, a world where you never abode, where you fought the gods and almost won. Almost. You carry that image like a burn. For the first time in eons, doubt returns, small, but sharp. You wonder if one version of you could resist. What stopped this one? Historians still argue whether. Doubt weakens demons or strengthens them. You find it does both. It keeps you aware, and awareness is the only defense in the warp. The god notices. Of course he does. His attention descends like warmth, like approval. You understand the message immediately. Keep going. You obey, though no obedience feels heavier. You find your next stage in an unexpected place, an Imperial archive world, buried deep beneath layers of security and faith. Its surface crawls with librarians, adepts, and psychic wardens, a place designed to remember, which, naturally, makes it irresistible. Lore masters still debate whether the gods of chaos fear memory. They should. Memory is a kind of order. You infiltrate through a fracture in time, manifesting as an advisor in one of the lesser. Libraries, a mortal shape again. With soft hands and a scholar's voice, you help the archivists catalog forbidden texts, prophecies, heresies, half-erased visions. They think you're human. They're wrong, but it's cute that they try. Your mission, though you hesitate to call it that, is simple. Rewrite a single story. One of the oldest scrolls in the vaults contains an account of the Horus Heresy, the Emperor's betrayal, the great war that split humanity. It's one of the few narratives the Imperium guards without change. You alter one line. Chaos-corrupted Horus becomes chaos. Answered Horus, such a small shift. But you feel the ripple. Across time, across belief, across the psychic echo chamber of human thought. You've planted a new idea that the gods didn't seduce. Humanity, they responded to it. Trivia. There's a heretical sect among Imperial historians who claim chaos was born from mankind's imagination. They trace the theory to an anonymous source they call the Librarian of Dust. You dot as the alteration spreads. You notice something strange. No divine reaction, no approval, no correction, just quiet. You start to worry. Historians still argue whether Tzeentch rewards subtlety or spectacle. You've delivered both, and yet he says nothing. Silence from a god of endless motion is more terrifying than wrath. You begin to suspect this is another experiment. Maybe he's waiting to see if you'll collapse without attention. Maybe he's gone. You stay on that world for decades, moving between mortal faces, whispering new versions of old truths. Every edit becomes scripture for someone, heresy for another. The archives grow tangled with contradictions, a history so inconsistent that it becomes honest again. Lore masters still debate whether chaos seeks truth or only the illusion of it. You've learned that illusion is truth, as long as enough people believe it. But doubt remains. That memory of your reflection, that glimpse of another self, it gnaws at you, is soft static at the back of your thoughts, until one day you meet someone who hears it too. A psych librarian, young, unscarred, with eyes that glow faintly when he speaks. He asks questions he shouldn't. He quotes lines from your sermons without knowing they're yours, and then, one evening, he looks at you across the candlelit desk and says, "You sound like a god." Trying to remember how to be human. You almost laugh. Almost dot he studies you. What if the gods aren't above us? He whispers. What if they're just what we become when no one's left to stop us? The air trembles, the warp stirs. You know what's happening. The god has noticed him. Trivia. Psychic records from that planet later mention an incident of spontaneous apotheosis, where an entire library vanished into blue flame, leaving behind only a single feather made of glass. The psychic smiles as the walls begin to warp. If that's true, he says, then you're not my teacher. And before you can stop him, he pulls you in. You see through his eyes as the warp consumes you both. Merging thought with thought, lie with lie. There's no victory, no loss, only exchange. When it's over, You are no longer sure who's inside who. Historians still argue whether mortals can truly influence demons. They can, but only if the demon forgets where it ends, and for the first time in your existence. You are not sure which one of you the god is watching. When you awaken, you're standing inside the ruins of a fortress that shouldn't exist. At first, you think it's Firith's equation rebuilt, but the geometry is different, sharper, angrier. The stones hum like they're whispering names. You touch one, and it says yours. Lore masters still debate whether consciousness can fuse permanently between mortal and demon. They write about resonant integration, a rare state where two souls vibrate in sync. You've achieved it, though you wish you hadn't. You can feel the psych librarian inside you, a pulse of human thought nested deep within your own mind. He doesn't speak, but he listens. Historians still argue whether memory has mass. If it does, you're heavier than planets. Every act, every identity you've worn, presses down until you can barely move. You stagger through your new fortress, your final fortress, though you don't know that yet. The world outside is a storm. Warp and matter have fused, sky bleeding into ground. You see armies moving your armies, though you didn't summon them. Demons with mirrored faces, soldiers made of echo and dust. They fight without orders, bound to instincts you no longer recall giving. You're not their master. You're their recursion. Trivia. Fragments recovered from the Chronicle of Lethus. Prime describe an army that fought itself for 7 days, then vanished when it realized there was no enemy. No one ever connected it to you. You watch the chaos below. Every blow mirrors another. Every scream harmonizes with its echo. It's beautiful and unbearable. You whisper, "Stop." The word folds through reality, and everything freezes mid-motion. That's when you sense them shapes in silver armor, their psychic light burning clean through the warp's haze. Grey knights. You can taste their intent before they arrive. They're not here to fight. They're here to erase. Historians still argue if Grey Knights truly kill demons or just banish them temporarily. The truth is simpler. They overwrite the narrative. They replace was with never was. You could flee. You don't. Lore masters still debate whether pride is possible in beings without ego. You can confirm it is. Pride survives everything, even deletion. You descend the stairs to meet them, every step erasing a memory. You can feel your past slipping fortresses, wars, sermons, laughter all dimming into static. The psycho's voice inside your head speaks for the first time. Let them. You pause. His tone isn't pleading, it's certain. Let them end it. You almost obey. Then you realize the irony. Tzeentch doesn't end things. He repurposes them. This is no execution. It's another revision. You raise your hands not in defense, but in greeting. The Grey Knights stop, forming a circle of silver and fire. Their leader steps forward, blade raised. You look at him, and for the briefest moment, you see yourself reflected in his visor, not monstrous, not divine, just tired. Trivia. The Grey Knight's librarian records an unnamed engagement where a demon surrendered without combat, requesting only acknowledgement of its name. The file ends mid-sentence, corrupted. You say nothing as the blade descends. Light fills everything. Not heat, not pain, just clarity. You see your fortress crumble, your armies dissolve, your body fade into abstraction. But instead of ending, you unfold. Your awareness stretches across dimensions. You see time as fabric. Destiny is a rumor. You see Tzeentch himself or something close to him watching. He's not angry. He's amused, always amused. Historians still argue whether demons experience enlightenment before dissolution. You have your answer. Yes, but it doesn't help. The psycho inside you speaks again. Softly. Maybe this was the point. Maybe you were never meant to win or lose, just to understand. You reply, understanding is still obedience. He laughs. You don't. Then you notice something strange. The Grey Knights aren't celebrating. They're confused. Their blades flicker. Their psychic wards flicker. One of them falls to his knees, clutching his head. You realize why. You didn't die. You transferred. Your essence seeps into their armor. Their wards, their words. You've infected their prayers. Lore masters still debate whether demons can possess purity. You've just proven they can rewrite it. You whisper into their minds not corruption, not temptation. Just possibility. A question too small to be noticed, yet too large to be erased. What if we're wrong? It's enough. One by one. They falter. Not all. Just enough for imbalance to begin. Trivia. Centuries later, the Inquisition will report a grey contagion, a quiet heresy among the Grey Knights, where certain veterans hesitate before killing demons, murmuring about cycles and symmetry. No one will trace it to this day. The fortress collapses round you. Light folding inward, you feel the Psyker's presence fading. You're free now. He says, you shake your head, or think you do. Freedom's not real, just another shape of the cage. He smiles again, inside your mind. Then build a better one. The last stone falls. Silence follows for a moment. There's peace, not victory. Not punishment, just pause. Historians still argue whether demons can rest. You think maybe, once, they can dot in the endless blue between worlds. You drift half prince, half memory, all paradox. You can feel Tzeentch's laughter rising again, soft and approving. You've become the perfect lesson, because you've proven what he always knew. Even chaos needs symmetry. The light fades slowly, as if reluctant to leave you behind. When it finally dims, you find yourself lying on warm soil, not the iron dust of demon worlds, not the glass sands of the warp. Real earth. It smells of rain and ash. You blink, and for the first time in millennia, the sky doesn't move. You're mortal again, or close enough to make no difference. Lore masters still debate whether Daemon Princes can ever truly return to flesh. The ecclesiarchy calls it heresy. The Ordo Malleus calls it impossible. But impossibility is just the favorite disguise of chaos. Your proof. You breathe, you bleed. You hunger. Your armor is gone. Your wings, your claws, your voice of thunder, gone. The air burns your lungs. The light hurts your eyes. For a moment, you feel grief, sharp and clean. Then you laugh, of course. You've been everything except human for so long. It's almost refreshing to fail again. Historians still argue if the gods strip their servants of power as punishment or reward. You know it's neither. It's maintenance. Every tool dulls. Even divinity needs sharpening. You walk until you find civilization, or what passes for it, a frontier world, small. Have forgotten where the Imperium's grip is a rumor. The people here still pray, but softly, as if afraid of being overheard. Perfect. You take a new name, Elias, something harmless. You become a wanderer, a teacher, a man who asks too many questions. You help repair machines, bless fields, guide children. You live small, quiet. You stop thinking in grand equations and start counting harvests. At night. You still hear whispers from the warp, faint, affectionate. The god hasn't abandoned you. He's just watching, curious to see how long you'll last without her. Leash, trivia. A minor ecclesiarchal record speaks of Saint Elias the Kindly, who healed with words rather than miracles. No relics, no martyrs, no temples, just a story that spread quietly. Through border worlds, they never knew they were canonizing a demon prince. Months pass, then years. The world begins to trust you. You build nothing, lead nothing, demand nothing. You simply talk. People listen. You realize your voice still carries something unnatural. Not power, but gravity. Ideas bend toward it. Lore masters still debate whether corruption always requires intention. You don't intend anything. You just are. Chaos doesn't need cults or banners. It just needs someone to start asking why. You teach philosophy to farmers. You teach patience desserts. You tell them that the Emperor's light is not a command, but a reflection. It changes depending on who looks. They nod. They understand. And somewhere, far away, another inquisitor starts another. Foul-titled Elias the Subtle. Historians still argue whether heresy spreads faster by word or by silence. You've learned that silence works best. Let them find the answers themselves. It's cleaner that way. One night, a child asks you if you've ever seen a god. You smile and say, once. What did he look like? You think for a long time, like a question that forgot it needed an answer. The child laughs, and something in that sound makes you ache. You remember. Suddenly, the psyker who merged with you, the countless lives erased, the fortress collapsing, the laughter of your god. You feel it all at once, a weight heavier than any punishment. Trivia. One of your students, a scribe named Oren, will later compile your teachings into a book titled The Mirror That Breathes. It will circulate quietly among imperial scholars. 200 years later, it will be declared apocryphal and banned. That's how you know it succeeded. You live like this for decades, long enough to forget what eternity felt like. You even begin to think, foolishly, that maybe this is peace. But peace, like power, is just another state to be corrected. It begins with a shadow in the sky, ripple, faint and silent, spreading outward from the horizon. The birds vanish, the ground hums. You know the feeling instantly. Attention.tze and Tzeentch is watching again. Lore masters still debate whether the gods remember every servant or if they eventually lose interest. You're living proof that they never forget. They just wait until irony ripens. That night, as you sit by the fire, the air distorts, flames bend toward you, colors deepen, and your reflection in the light begins to move on its own. It smiles, the same old smile. You did well, the reflection says. You've learned humility. You've learned patience. Now teach them something new. You shake your head. No, they deserve to be left alone. The reflection laughs, a sound made of feathers and thunder. Alone is an illusion, even in silence. You're speaking for us. You reach out, and the fire dies. When it returns, the reflection is gone. The whispers too. Only quiet remains. Historians still argue if redemption is possible for the servants of chaos. You've stopped asking. Redemption implies a line between light and dark. You know there's only refraction. You live another 20 years. When you finally die, it's not in battle or ritual, but in your sleep, heart slowed, breath shallow, eyes open toward a dawn you'll never see. The villagers bury you on a hill, facing sunrise, unaware that the soil around your grave glows faintly blue for 7 days. Trivia. Centuries later, pilgrims will visit the hill, claiming to hear a voice in the wind, whispering lessons of patience and change. They'll build a shrine, small and humble. They'll call it the resting place of the forgotten Saint. And far beyond the stars, in the impossible hold of the architect of fate, Tzeentch will smile, not because he reclaimed you, but because you finally became what he wanted all along, an idea that teaches itself. The shrine stands for 1,000 years. Then, as all things do, it begins to fade. The pilgrims stop coming. The name Elias becomes a whisper, then a symbol, then nothing. The world itself burns during some nameless crusade. Its ashes folded into new histories, your story. Like everything else, dissolves into myth. Lore masters still debate whether myths in the warp have gravity. If stories, once forgotten, can attract new meaning, they can. They do. That's why, somewhere deep within the immaterium, your name stirs again. It starts as vibration, a tremor between thoughts, the prayer half remembered. A peasant girl on a distant world dreams of a blue light in human form, whispering, ask why, and just like that, you exist again. Not flesh, not flame, but echo. Historians still argue if demons reincarnate or if each return is just imitation. You know the truth. Identity is repetition wearing new makeup. You're not the same. You're not different. You just continue. You hover in the warp. Consciousness thin as mist. You see the gods again. Tzeentch, Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, vast as storms, bored as children. They don't notice you. Not yet. You're too small, too subtle, a whisper, a breath, and that's good. You've learned that power isn't in being heard. It's in being repeated. Lore masters still debate whether demons ever understand their gods. They don't. Understanding is limitation, and chaos has none. But you've learned to live inside that paradox, to accept meaning that eats itself. You drift, letting time do the thinking. Centuries slide by, civilizations rise, fall, repeat. Humans still pray to the same throne, still bleed for the same promises. You'd feel pity if pity hadn't been engineered out of you long ago. Then, somewhere in the void, you hear it. Again, your master's voice, not laughter this time, but something slower, almost tired. You've done well. My fragment. But the pattern remains unfinished. You answer without words. Because words imply difference, the reply is instinct. Then rewrite it again. The warp shivers. You feel yourself expand, fragment, divide. Thousands of versions of you bloom across realities. Preachers, tyrants, ghosts, scholars, heretics, each one speaking differently, each carrying the same infection, curiosity, trivia. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica maintains reports of identical, prophetic dreams spreading across multiple sectors, all containing the same question. What if even the Emperor serves something larger? They call it the Elias contagion. They'll never know it's you. Historians still argue whether Tzeentch ever loses control of his own agents. The answer doesn't matter. The question is enough. You've become the question, the purest form of your gods. Design. A servant so obedient that obedience no longer requires command. The other gods notice. Nurgle watches you with fond disgust. Slaanesh finds poeter. Why, in your recursion, Khorne, naturally, tries to kill you by thought alone, which only multiplies you further. Even they laugh, grudgingly. You've become chaos in its most distilled state. Movement without motive. Lore masters still debate whether this is victory or oblivion. You don't care. Purpose was always the wrong word. This is momentum. And yet, amid infinity, you feel something different, small, human, the psycho's voice. Again, faint as an old echo. Was this what you wanted? You don't answer. You don't need to. He already knows, because this was never about wanting. It was about witnessing, about proving that every story, even divine ones, must eventually turn inward. You realize, in that moment, that you become both subject and observer, the experiment that runs itself. You are what happens when chaos learns self-awareness and decides not to stop. Trivia. Deep in the archives of the Black Library, there's a forbidden codex titled De Principis Inversus, which claims that one Chaos Prince transcended servitude by accepting it so fully that he looped back into neutrality. No one knows who wrote it. The ink glows blue when exposed to psychic light. Historians still argue if true. Neutrality can exist within chaos. You smile, not in triumph, but in amusement. Neutrality is chaos. When the scale is infinite enough, You fade now, by choice this time. Your fragments scatter across stars, hidden in languages, in songs, in thoughts whispered before sleep. Every mind you touch becomes a mirror, every mirror another doorway. You are endless recursion, and finally, you understand your god. Tzeentch never wanted slaves. He wanted mirrors, reflections that move on their own, so he can watch himself evolve. You are never bound. You are prototype. You laugh softly as the warp folds round you, the last of your voice dissolving into quiet. Somewhere, on a nameless world, a child stares at the night sky and feels the urge to ask why. That's enough, because you know now, the game doesn't end. It only changes players. And maybe, just maybe, that's the closest thing to freedom chaos allows. And so, the wheel turns again. The storm quiets, you rest. Or what pauses for rest among the shifting tides of eternity? The colors fade to black, the noise to breath. You feel the warp moving round you, slower now, like a great creature dreaming of itself. You think of all the faces you've worn. Warrior, saint, ghost, god, man, and Realize they were never masks. They were echoes, reflections of the same. Endless curiosity that built both mortals and monsters alike. Every lie you told was a truth seen from the wrong direction. Every punishment, another form of understanding. You wonder, briefly, if the Emperor ever felt the same. If, in his golden cage, he'd learned that power and submission are the same shape viewed from opposite sides. The warp breathes, you dissolve a little more with each exhale. It doesn't hurt. It feels like laughter that forgot it started as a scream. Somewhere far away, mortals still fight and pray and dream. They build new myths, new truths, new gods. And in each story, no matter how bright, no matter how pure, there's always a shadow shaped like you. You smile. Because that's all you ever wanted to be, the reminder that even eternity can surprise itself. And as the last thought fades, you whisper what may or may not be a farewell. And so the wheel of fate turns again. Sacrific. He has been made, the first key has turned, and mankind takes one step closer to the light of the throne. This is not the end. This is only the beginning.